everyone, I'm Lau, and this is the first video to explain Ya tiene comisario el pueblo, or the town has a sheriff now. I'm going to do this video based on Gaucho culture and as well Argentinian culture, which is basically the same. And we will see a little bit of history. Of course, I am not a historian. I'm trying just to compile everything as the best I can so everybody can understand it. And let us begin. The gaucho term was used for the first time in a letter sent to the viceroy in 1771. At the time, it was just a bunch of bandits that were on the roads, robbing people and stealing from them everything they could, because the gauchos themselves used to be a nomad tribe, so to speak. Basically, their birth is the mixing between criollos or Creoles, so the people that were descendants from Spanish, they were from Spanish family but were born outside of Spain, and the natives from here. So as you can imagine, they weren't like fully accepted into society. That made them pretty much like pariahs. They were always trying to find something, some way to survive. And among these ways, eventually they started to get hired by people on ranches in order to take care of farming and the animals. Eventually, there was just a working force. They were working on the fields. They were taking care of all of that. But it wasn't until the 1800s, when the whole independent movement started, that they became a little bit more important and relevant to our history. Because at the very beginning, we didn't have an army of our own. We were still a Spanish colony, so we had some Spanish soldiers, I guess. But of course, we were trying to break, the alliance with Spain. We were trying to set ourselves free from them. So we had to start our own army. And in doing so, most of the people, especially rich people, would send over their servants to be soldiers. Among those servants were gauchos, natives, and black people. So this is something that was addressed by General San Martin. He wrote in a letter that he was tired of seeing how the elites of Buenos Aires, most likely, they preferred to send others to die for them instead of fighting themselves. And he thought that given that we were fighting for independence, everybody had to be involved, not just the poor ones or the disposable ones. Like, everybody had to be up in the front and giving their lives for this new country that was going to be born. So, among all this revolutionary time, there was one figure that cemented what means to be a gaucho today, and that was General Martín Miguel de Güemes. Martín Güemes, he was from the area that now is Jujuy and Salta. And one of the fun facts about this movie is that the character that is El Negro, played by Jorge Cafrune, he is dressed in a very Güemes way. So he's using the same poncho that Güemes used at the time. It's red with black details, and also the way he has his horse with this leather protection that is a protection both for the rider's legs and also for the side of the horse, especially when you go down, very tall grass, very tall and hard grass. This is a way to protect both. So he has that as well, the poncho, and also the clear colors, and well, of course, the beard and the and the hat. Miguel de Güemes was very relevant because he was the first governor of the area that now is Salta. And he was also an officer under Belgrano's commands. Belgrano is the man that created our flag as well. And he wasn't a soldier. He was sent over because some people in Buenos Aires didn't like him and they were expecting for him to die in the battlefield. So he was turned into a general, and he had many fights that he lost and some others that he won thanks to San Martin, because San Martin took pity upon him and was like, I'm going to teach him how to fight. And so he was able to, to earn a few victories. And Güemes in particular, eventually by San Martin, was designated as General-in-Chief of the Army of Observation, and he was in charge of the defense and contention of the Realistas. Realistas was a way to call the Spanish. So this was in the NOA, the Argentinian Northwest, and also Alto Peru. Alto Peru was another land from the Viceroy. During that time, he was part of the Guerra Gaucha. As the word says, it was the Gaucho War, where they stopped 6 invasions by the Spanish army. And before all of that, in 1806, during the British invasions, Güemes was sent from the north of Argentina to Buenos Aires in order to protect the port. And he was one, if not the only man in the world. I mean, according to Wikipedia, it says one of the few, but I read somewhere else that is the only time that it happened. He was able to take on a ship by horse because there was this navy ship from England. It was called Justine. They were beached because of the low tide. They were stuck in there, and Güemes grabbed a bunch of people on horse. They went to the ship and took it, as prisoners. So he was the only one to do so, as far as I know. Now I'm doing a few clarifications. This is editing Laura, and I forgot to mention as well that Güemes had an army at the time, and you can still join that army. They're still around. They were called Los Infernales. Los Infernales, and reason why their ponchos were red is because it means hellish, or the ones from hell. So you can still join them. They are pretty much like the Granaderos a Caballo. That was San Martin's army, or the Patricios, which is another army from the 1800s that you can join now. I don't know about the Infernales. I know that in order to be either a Patricio or a Granadero, you have to be from the military, you have to be a soldier. I don't know about the Infernales. Maybe they also do. I will probably leave all the information here. But, they all use the red poncho, as you can see, which is basically saying that you're the most badass of all the badasses between the gauchos. So there's this little tidbit of information. So if we think of Güemes and we think of all the gauchos that were in the army at the time, this new figure of the gaucho started to emerge, and it eventually became what it is today. Whenever someone thinks of a gaucho, will think of loyalty, bravery, and friendship above all. And even today in Argentina, when we are asking someone to do a favor for us, we can use the phrase "me haces un favor," which is "will you do me a favor?" But we also use "me haces una gauchada." So, will you do a gauchada for me? It means, this sense of friendship and loyalty and being there whenever you need it. And so this is what gauchos are today, and they're a part of our culture. And they are, very well. Um, uh, this movie is a good homage to them as well. So during the movie, you will see that there are a lot of misspellings, and it's not because I don't know how to write, it's because I was trying to replicate the misspellings that happened in this town. Because of course, as I said before, it's like 1850, no, 1880s probably, in the middle of nowhere. There isn't very good education. I'll stop myself right here because what I was about to say does fall down on something I just became aware. In case you didn't know, Lucrecia Martel, who's a very famous director here in Argentina, presented a new movie slash documentary about the death of a chief, of a native chief. And, of course, a lot of people that speaks in there, they speak like people from the province they belong to, and also very similar to the way they speak here in Ya tiene comisario el pueblo, which is this very rural kind of accent that exists here in Argentina. Each province has their own accent or their own ways and their own words to speak. And what I didn't know is that a bunch of porteños, as usual, they started to complain they cannot understand these people. And, saying that they are poorly educated, or, that they are ignorant and brute or whatever. Back in the 1800s, as I'm saying in this case, most likely it was due to lack of education, because Domingo Faustino Sarmiento is the one that created the concept of public school. So he's the one that wanted people to be able to read and write and be smart. But later, at this time, 2026, everybody goes to school, everybody knows how to read and to write. If they don't, it's because of some very serious issue. So it's no longer a matter of education or lack thereof, but it's an accent. It's the way they speak. We cannot complain about it. When I speak when I speak from people from different areas of the states due to my job, I may complain because I don't like their accents because it makes my job as an interpreter harder. But I will not tell them, that they don't know how to speak or they are ignorant or something. And that's something that a bunch of porteños are doing now. There's this whole discussion going on at this moment, so I don't want to be misunderstood. The Gauchos have their own language, and this is part of their language. I grew up with a Gaucho. My grandfather was one of them. That's why I understand everything they're saying. I don't need subtitles to understand what they're saying. So have some respect for the Gauchos, have some respect for the culture, and I hope that's pretty much it. Thank you. It's really hard to try to trace a parallel between cowboys and gauchos because even though they're basically the same, I feel like the American cowboys don't have all the aura that the gauchos in Argentina have, which again, as I said before, is being extremely loyal and brave and very knowledgeable from everything that surrounds them, in the countryside or wherever they live. So I think the gauchos are better. Is my opinion. Maybe I'm biased, but it's okay. So as I was saying, they don't have a very very good education at this moment. Of course, this has changed. There are schools, and many of them, their children are sent to learn, in university or something. So there's always some bad uses of certain words and phrases, but it's mostly now a cultural thing instead of them just being uneducated. So there are certain things about the pronunciation as well that is important to bring up because if any of you is learning Spanish, you will notice that they don't say the words quite well. The most basic, I mean, the one that repeats itself the most is with whatever word ends in ado, in ado, is going to sound like au. For instance, this town is called Monte Olvidado, which is forgotten wilderness, so to speak. So when anything ends with ado, they will drop the d, and so it ends on ao, which in Spanish sounds a o. And when you put a o together in speed, the regular speech pattern, it turns into an au, so au. So you can say Monte Olvidado, Monte Olvidado, Monte Olvidado. Um, I know it sounds weird, but it's the way we say it. Well, some people would say it. And another thing that happens, for instance, with the word ahora, as you know, in Spanish, the H is silent unless it has an S on or a C at first, but usually is silent because it gives you like a pause between two letters. For instance, in the word ahora, without the H, the same thing that with ado happens. The a o turns into a u. That's why instead of saying ahora, a lot of people say aura. And yes, we also have the word aura, which is aura, but due to the context, you know that they're meaning ahora, which is now. So those are, I think, most of the mispronunciations that you will hear. Of course, there are a lot of words that are wrongly used and some others that are mispronounced. It's like speaking with orthographic mistakes. So another detail that happens, aside from the Gaucho language is the suffocación. So Nini Marshall's character, suffocación, Sergeant Paniagua wife. Well, first of all, her name does mean suffocation because she's constantly, on top of her husband, I presume. But her accent to me sounds a lot like an accent from La Rioja, which is another of the provinces that form part of Cuyo. And this way to not, the R sound. I know that is really hard, especially for English speaking people, because we have two sounds for the R. One is the soft R and then the hard R. So at the beginning of a word, let's say Rosaura, which is one of the names, it's a strong R. But in the middle of a name, for instance, in my name, which is Laura, it's softer. And when you have two R's in the middle of a word, for instance, zorro, is in order to make it sound like it's at the beginning of the word, so it's a harder R. But what Nini Marshall does is that she changes the pronunciation of the double R or the R's themselves by almost like a sound. So you'll say Rosaura, or she will say El Socio, and that is something that happens mostly, a person of Buenos Aires will do it mostly when they're trying to do the accent from La Rioja. So I'm pretty sure that she's from La Rioja in this movie. I don't know if it was her choice or it was something on the script. So that is also a little detail that I wanted to bring up in case someone is learning Spanish and it's like, I don't understand the words that she's saying. It's because she's doing it with an accent. And now I would like to speak about three names actually. We have the Sargento Paniagua, Sergeant Paniagua. Paniagua is a very common last name, especially I think among people that come from natives, because it means bread and water. During a time they will be given just bread and water to survive, and so that's why they were eventually named Paniagua. And then we have someone, when they speak about El Negro being on a ranch and he's in the ranch of a man called Dios te libre. It's a very weird name. I'm pretty sure that it was used, especially in the 1800s, like now, because it means may God spare you from, or may God save you. It's Dios te libre, or may God keep you from harm, so to speak, so it's a very interesting name, because during the time, they would use like Catholic calendars to get their names and something like that, or they were very believers. So naming your child Dios te libre, is trying to protect him from any kind of evil. And then there's another name. When we're talking about the band, one of the members of the band is called Lorenzo Seis Dedos. So Seis Dedos means six fingers. So maybe someone in the family had six fingers and it ended up being the family name, or maybe he had six fingers. I don't know. It wasn't seen on the movie, but it's just a little joke, I guess, in between all the names. And something that probably everybody knows about the gaucho culture and is worldwide known at this moment, mostly thanks to the Argentinian national team, a football team, soccer for some, is the mate. Mate, the name mate actually comes from this kind of squash or pumpkin that is what creates the mate. It gets hollowed and dried and then curated in order to have this infusion that we drink. So in order to drink mate, not only you need the pumpkin to have it from, but you also need yerba mate. And yerba mate is the leaf that gets dried and eventually crushed and used on the mate. So this is not a drug. It's perfectly safe. Everybody can have it. There are kids that drink it. I think the first time I had mate, I was probably like 3 years old. It was cold, so I wouldn't burn myself. So it's natural. Is some people says that it's better than coffee, that it gives energy or a boost. So you can have it if you want. And there are two ways to have it. So you can have it what is called amargo, bitter, or you can have it sweet. Amargo is with nothing, it's just the yerba and water. And sweet, of course, is with sugar. And a lot of people says that artificial sweetener makes it taste kind of metallic. I don't know, I never tried it like that because at home we usually drink it amargo or bitter. But just in case, if that anybody wants to try, it's better if you do it with sugar, regular sugar. And also you can add different kind of herbs, or you can add also peels of orange, tangerine, anything that you like, that can have some kind of taste. You can add it to the mate as well. So there is no big deal about it. It's stronger than a tea, and it doesn't really taste like a tea, but it's like the most basic way to explain it. It's kind of like a tea, but stronger. Speaking about things that you can add to the mate, there's a moment where Sofocación says, I'm going to put ombu seeds so you can burst. So ombu is a very traditional plant that grows here in Argentina. So usually, according to what I've read, it's most likely from Chaco, Misiones, this selvatic area from our country. But at some point, it was brought to Buenos Aires, and now it's everywhere in Buenos Aires and the area of La Pampa. So you may look at it and you say that is a tree, but according to all the biological uh, taxonomy, it doesn't really fit on the characteristics of a tree because it doesn't have wood. Yes, it's big and it looks intimidating, but it's not wood. It's not good for anything. And according to what I've read, some gauchos think of the ombu as a useless tree, and it actually brings bad luck because it's not good for fire, it's not good to build anything, and it's just there. But at the same time, it gives a very nice shade, so you can just sit in between the roots and have some mate while doing it. And even if it's not good for useful stuff like building or setting a fire, the leaves from bamboo apparently, while crushed and used to drink or to make a tea or to put it on the mate, may have some kind of laxative effect. So that's why Focación says that she's going to put it on the mate so he burst, like saying, I'm going to put a lot of bamboo into it so, you know, you burst. So I did found about the leaves, not the seeds. I don't know if anything else happens when you have the seeds of bamboo, but the most common way to have this laxative effect is with the leaves. So maybe it was a mistake. I don't know. So one more thing about mate is that it has many names. Especially now, with newer generations, new names are added. The most traditional ones are amargos, bitters. If anybody tells you, would you like an amargo, would you like a bitter, is because they're asking you if you want a mate. Verdes is also a way to call the mate because, of course, it's green, so it's going to be called greens as well. And I am from the generation of the 90s. I was born in 92. And there was this host at the time, all summers he had his own show on the beach, and his last name was Mateico. So of course, a bunch of kids from my age, well, not kids, but a lot of people from my age will call Mates Mateico because it fits with the last name of this person. So you will hear in the movie Amargos and maybe Verdes, but I'm not quite sure. I do remember Amargos, so it's another way to call the mate. One thing that I forgot to clarify was that cebar mate, it means to pour water into the mate. Cebar, I don't know if it has something similar in English. I don't think so, but is that putting water into mate to serve mate. Well, this is Editing Laura one more time. This time I would like to add a few things about the mate that I forgot, and they always drive me crazy whenever I see someone from outside, a foreigner, speaking about mate and how people invited them to drink and such. Is that they always say, you must not touch the straw called bombilla, from which you drink the mate, and everybody is like, oh, you must never touch it, and it seems almost like it's some kind of ritual or some kind of I don't know, like it will bring you bad luck or something. It is not. The thing is that the bombilla is this metal straw. It has a few holes in the bottom from where the water gets in, So what happens is that if you move it, it's going to get clogged with little bits of the yerba mate, of the leaves, of the crushed leaves, or the sticks that come from it. And given that having a clogged straw is something that is very annoying, it's a lot easier if you just don't move the straw so it doesn't get clogged. Over time, there have been some inventions, we can call it like that, trying to avoid, getting the mate leaves inside the straw. My grandmother used a few of them and she was like, none of this works. So it's a lot easier if you just don't move it around. It's not like a spoon or something that you need to mix. Just leave it where it is and everything will be fine. Eventually, it might get clogged as well, but at least won't be so often as it happens, if someone moves it on purpose. So with this, I'm going to close this video that is about Gaucho culture and, a little bit of language and such. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one.